Hello everyone, nubkeks here. Welcome back to Nub Raids, and today you might notice my showcase for the Lysanthir Beastbane fusion. I've actually taken it down off of YouTube, or I switched it to unlisted, so you can still find the link if you want. But I was wrong. I messed up. I messed up. Here we go. We've got a comment from Paul Clark, and this is important. Like, I always try to read the comments while I can, and there's definitely some criticisms. I say, actually you might be right, but it just doesn't fit with my channel or what I like to do to change it. Or, I respect the criticism, but it might be wrong. But then sometimes there's criticisms, and I say, actually, you know what? Yeah, you were right. And I do need to do something different. And that's how I do feel about this one. But Paul Clark commented, says, it seems that some of the damage difference between Lysanthir and Thor could be explained by Thor's better gear. I had loads of attack on Thor, but much lower defense on Lysanthir. So basically what I had done was taking my non-attack Merciless gear, which was mostly actually more Rotus gear, mixed with some defense percent gear as well. But a lot of that defense percent gear, let me bring up the video so we can look at something in the background. A lot of that defense percent gear didn't have the best glyphs on it. It wasn't properly ascended because we don't get any ascension materials on the test server. So it wasn't up to scratch. And also the merciless accessories I have, just the accessories for high elves in general, are actually a lot worse than what I happen to have for barbarians. So I said, actually, yeah, you know what? This is actually a very big advantage to Thor just based on gear. So what I've done, I've gone back and I've retested it all to see, okay, what I had to do, I had to take Thor's banner off. And then Lysanthir had been in speed boots. I said, no, he doesn't need the speed boots, defense percent boots. So he's actually at a more similar speed. So I got them as close in terms of stats as I could. It's still not quite perfect. And Lysanthir does have that relic on that I can't take off. But to give you a much better idea, so let me bring up the stats and we'll see where we ended up. Okay, so for our first comparison, we've got, actually, I checked at 100 turns in. So I did want to see, obviously, Lysanthir sort of scales really well the longer the fight goes on. Would that make a difference? You can see 100 turns in. Thor had 270 million damage with his team. Lysanthir is actually much closer than I thought it was before. When I improved the gear, he's up to, I made it more equitable. He's up to 250. So that's much, much closer. And then when we come to the final figures, Thor, for the final damage, got 476 million. Lysanthir was 443 million. So it's actually very, very close. These champions are much closer together. And it becomes actually hard to know. It actually becomes difficult to know which champ or exactly where it falls. It does seem to me that Thor's a little bit stronger. You get that attack percent from Merciless gear, but it's pretty darn close. But I mean, head affinity can also play a role, a bit of randomness. So in short, Lysanthir, I think he's likely to be a little bit weaker than Thor in terms of damage, but it's pretty close. Now, what I've done then is I've come up with some key facts that we need to know. So in terms of him versus Thor, I put 3 disadvantages and 3 advantages. Now, disadvantage number 1, he scales off, I count this as a disadvantage, a long Hydra fight, right? Lysanthir, his A2, which is his biggest damage move by far, his A2 scales off of a long Hydra fight, basically. There he is with the A2, you can see he's done almost 1 million damage to a non-decapitated head. And you can see, look at that, 1.3 million per hit right there. That's with the Mad Hatter ally attack. He's gone in with another one, and yeah, etc. But he scales off the long Hydra fight to scale up that A2 damage. Now, he also, this is a disadvantage, he needs increased defense. By the way, in fact, I think maybe I X'd it off, but yeah, no, sorry, it's over here. Is that he was lacking increased defense through 90% of the showcase. Now, that's not actually true. I mean, as you can see right here, we've got, in fact, 3 turns of increased defense on Lysanthir. So he totally has increased defense. That one is not quite right. Sorry, where was I going? Where was I going? Oh, sorry, I was over at this. That's right. I was over at this. Let's go over to Lysanthir's actual damage over here. But he needs increased defense, which is important. So Thor self-buffs increase attack. They both self-buff increase crit damage, by the way. So this is the key thing. They both have increased crit damage. They both have AoE decreased speed. Lysanthir's is actually more consistent because of how his A3 works. It he ignores affinity, does it before attacking. If Hex is out there, etc. But he does need, whoops, excuse me, he does need increased defense, which is a downside. Thor self-buffs increased attack. That would make him even more of a mischief target if you don't have increased attack for others, but Lysanthir doesn't bring it for himself. And then this is, I think, an upside and a downside. As you can see, he's devoured here. He's devoured here. Let's go to the video. And so he's in here with Mad Hatter and Grand Oak Podrick. These are two very strong ally attack champions. Teox would be another really good one to pair with Lysanthir. He scales really well off ally attack and counter attack because his biggest damage move is A2 comes in with that. This is a pretty well set up team. He also, I forgot to put in, he also scales off having lots of buffs. So yeah, this should be like, bam, look at that. Slight downside, as you saw right there, he hit for 2 million. He didn't get the second hit of his A2 because he hit so hard it killed the head. So that's a slight downside too to be aware of. But yeah, the more ally attacks and counter attacks you have, the better. I think ally attack is particularly good because you've got champions like Teox and Mad Hatter that make you ally attack with hugely boosted bonus damage. And any champions like Mad Hatter in the future will scale well with him. Now, in terms of a downside, a positive is he brings weaken. Sorry, we've got its positive. So number one, versus Thor, he brings weaken. So if you are running Thor in a Hydra team and you can get a long fight, you can get increased defense on the team, and you've got a little bit of ally attacking in there. If you do not have weaken in the team, this guy brings weaken. He will do more damage in your Hydra team than you would do with a Thor if you don't have weaken. Bringing that debuff is 25% more damage, basically. So, yeah, even if Thor might do a little bit more upfront damage, this guy brings weaken, which will push him ahead. That's a good debuff to bring. And he's also more consistent with the decreased speed. I think a big one, he's much, much tankier. And then I think there's also the possibility to combo him with Fina. I don't think that's actually very important. I covered it in my initial video. Unless they nerf Trunda, I don't think it's that important. And even still, it depends on what else you can bring. Like within High Elves, let's say we bring in Fina, we need 4 High Elves, 3 more High Elves on top of that. Well, we could bring in Atharion, or we could bring in Deliana. Where's Deliana? Over here for the block buffs. That's really good. And Atharion brings decreased attack. So let's say we go Fina, Atharion. If you bring in Bellinor for your decreased defense weaken, well, there you go. You might not need the Lysanthir in there. You might fit someone else in. And because Fina doesn't bring increased defense, it does get a little awkward. So I think he's very strong with Fina potentially. But you might end up bringing someone like a Taurus or I don't know, somebody else, like another damage dealer might come in instead. But he is a high elf, so it is certainly it's a good possibility for a combo. But yeah, I think he's actually somewhat comparable. But yeah, it's sort of his Hydra limitations are one of his bigger things. So bear that in mind. But he is bringing you 2 really good debuffs. If you need them, it's great. Another downside, and this is just a more of a general point, I've actually gotten, weakened fusions. This is something we have had this year. Hang on, let me bring this up. This is just I think this is so silly, right? Here we are, hellhades.com, right? We have had 4 fusions this year. We have 3 of the 4 fusions are weakened champions for Hydra. Bro, what? Like, Mad Hatter, AoE weaken. Esme, AoE weaken. Lysanthir, AoE weaken. Now, don't get me wrong. I think good weakened champions for Hydra was definitely something we were lacking, and it's been great to get them. But, I mean, just with these, in the first 4 months of this year alone, I mean, if you've already got, like, a Lydia or a Venus, like another good weakened champion, you're already putting somebody probably on the bench. Like, you cannot fit these all in. It's just, it's just, this is way too much for me. As a Hydra fan, it's just too much. So that's definitely an annoying thing about him. He is the third, almost in a row, a third AoE weekend champion. That's great for Hydra in a row. Bro, what? Come on, bro. What's going on here? I know Mad Hatter is, I think the others are more generally useful as well. I think he's probably the most Hydra specific of them. Oh, and then I was going to do a bit of testing with Fina. I decided not to. One thing I'm not going to do in this video, I'm not going to do any arena testing. I think actually we'd need to have... Oh, no, we are reset for arena on the test server. I think he's good for arena, but not crazy. He definitely is more of a Hydra specialist, for sure. Definitely. And I think he can be good. So this is my updated review of him now. what do I actually think of Lysanthir now that I retested him and I made sure that the gear was actually properly done? He might be very good for you for Hydra. He actually does very solid damage. He also brings Spirit Affinity, which is a little bit unusual for Hydra. Um, these debuffs are very consistent and very strong, which is great. I think, as you saw, he combos very well with champions with Hex. He combos very well with Michinaki. So this is a thing, right? These weakened champions. Um, we talked about Bellinor and Lydia, Venus, a few champions with decreased defense and weakened together. It depends how many good decreased defense champions you have without the weaken. So champions like Krisk, maybe running him with something like possibly with a ninja or a Toshiro. You know, there's potential maybe for some combos there where this guy brings the weaken and somebody else brings the decreased defense. And decreased defense, depending on how much ignore defense you have, falls off a little bit in value. Still worth it, but a little bit. But yeah, he's a little bit tricky to make work, but he brings a lot of debuffs. He's super, super tanky, really tanky. He's not going to die. Yeah, so I think he could definitely be worth it for you for Hydra. Again, bearing in mind, we've had a lot of weak infusions already. So you might not need him, right? He's a very good Hydra damage dealer. He brings great debuffs. Do you need these debuffs? Do you need a great Hydra damage dealer? For me, I might grab him just for the possible Fina combo. For me, I don't need someone who's tankier. I actually don't need the weaken. And these downsides kind of suck a little bit. But hey, I might grab him just in case, again, that like if they remove decapitated heads having limited HP in the future, he'll do well because his full double hit can still hit. If they nerf Trunda in the future, oh, he could actually be a really good combo with Fina. So I think that's worth it to me to pick him up because, again, I've got the resources saved up. But I think if you're tight on resources, you have to ask yourself the question, you know, do I need another weekend? Do I really need a Hydra specialist damage dealer? And look into that. Bearing in mind, you'd also need to get a soul for him to really get the most out of him because he really wants a 3-star for defense. He wants a 4-star for crit damage and the 5-star for accuracy. He loves those stars, and he'll need a relic as well to actually do damage. So it's not a low investment. So I still do not highly recommend this fusion, but he is better than I thought. I think he's a situational fusion. He could be amazing, or he could be sitting in the vault. It depends on where you're at with your account, but he is better than I initially thought from my testing. And there we go. Now, one final thing to point out. I was thinking, were there any other champs I made? And this, I was actually going to do a video on this anyway. But M Fabian 55 has come out. I think this is now the record with Ashnar, and this is crazy. Nightmare Hydra team. Again, this is actually the exact sort of spot where you would run this dude. But of course, Ashnar brings provoke, whereas this guy doesn't. So Ashnar is definitely better. But Ashnar is another one. I think this is the only other champion I got a bit wrong recently because of this gear issue, that I just didn't have as good defense nuker gear set up for Hydra. I don't think it affected any of the previous reviews, but Ashnar I think has also been affected. Ashnar is actually very, very strong. Again, very similar to Ninja level damage. Yeah, huge potential while also bringing the big provoke. As you can see, there we go. Ashnar crushing the damage. Obviously, this is pretty much best in slot team, but it's yeah, it's extremely good. So there you go. Ashnar also very strong. Probably even a little stronger than Ninja overall, perhaps. Very similar levels. This guy, Lysanthir, let me, hang on. Yeah, if we look at the current top DPS list for Hydra on the Raid Shadow Legends leaderboards, obviously this doesn't cover Lysanthir, but covers some of the other newer ones. We can see, obviously, Trunda at 22 million, and then completely, obviously, reasonable drop-off to 3 million. We've lost 19 of the 22 million, jumping down to Taras. But Taras is in there. And by the way, we can see this Taras team is actually with a full reset team. So it's nuts. Obviously not as good as Trunda, but still absolutely bonkers. You got a couple of champs with Trunda. Varl actually still smashing, which is crazy. Varl the Destroyer. But then we've got Toshiro, we've got Iyasu, Calamitas, Ninja, Ashnar. They're all up there. And then the Dark Horse, Phoenix, is up there as well. He's such a dark horse. The epic damage dealer. Again, coming in with the Teox, the Mad Hatter. In fact, 4 ally attack champions, and he's smashing it out. I love that. Yeah, Thor is a bit down. He's at 741, so he's similar to Quintus, similar to Carnage, a little bit similar to Teox. Obviously, Teox is bringing ally attack stuff. So, yeah, I think that's where Lysanthir is gonna be. Not in the top 10, not in like the uber echelon. Is this even 10? It's a bit more. Not in like the uber echelon of super OP, but in like the echelon of like the Razelvargs, Marius, Garol, Harima, Thor, Carnage. I think he's going to be something in that sort of level of being really solid. And he's a great combo with Michinaki, a great combo with Moranix even as well. That's an interesting one I see there, and so on. And obviously all of this stuff, it also depends on when people have the time and the gear to test these champions. But they are the current leaderboards, which I think is a good insight. So it gives you an insight into Ashnar. It gives you a better, hopefully, insight into Lysanthir. Yeah, there you go. Updated. Hope you guys find it helpful. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time. Goodbye.